I couldn't have asked for more. I think Craig really got it on the nose with the valuation, and Fatmir really understood the buyers, and he built that trust with them, so that when he recommended they came and look at it, they looked at it before it had been marketed anywhere. I think he got the right people in front of us. Communication with Martin Gerard, I found, was absolutely excellent. Craig was the first person I spoke to, and he was available when I phoned. I'd leave a message if he wasn't in the office, and he'd phone me straight back. And he also gave me his mobile number and responded really promptly to any texts. If he couldn't reach me, he'd send me a text so I could see it if I was in a meeting. So I think communication with Craig was absolutely excellent. But then he handed the process over to Fatmir, and again, incredibly diligent. Now, Fatmir had a Wednesday off, and if I needed anything on a Wednesday, immediately I could contact Craig, and he could cope with that. But Fatmir kept me informed exactly what the process was. He kept in contact with the other Martin Gerard estate agent who was selling our buyer's flat, and WhatsApp messages, incredibly responsive. Actually, I was very, very impressed with both of them. Local knowledge, I think, particularly, as I said, this was quite an unusual house to sell. And when I picked up the phone initially to the office, Craig wasn't available. I think he was on holiday. So a couple of people came around and they looked at the property and went, actually, we've got somebody who really knows this market. We'd like him to come up and do the final valuation. And that's when I met Craig sort of in person since sort of all that time before. And for me, that he's been in the area for so many years. I felt he really did understand not just where the schools are and the transport links, but he understood how the broader area worked, what the sort of community might be like, what sort of person it might be that would be looking at this property. And when he came up with a valuation and explained his reasoning, the comparisons that he showed me and said, well, look, this is sold for this, that is sold for that. He really did understand the why it sold for that value. And I felt that gave me an awful lot of confidence that the valuation that he came up with was fair and right for this quite unique property. So yeah, absolutely. Fatmir, I didn't have so much opportunity, I didn't really need him to be able to explain the local area, but what was absolutely vital, he did understand it, because he went to the buyers that he'd been in contact with and said, I think I've got the perfect property for you. And so he could explain to them why this would be their perfect next home. So I think the communication about the local area from Fatmir was to our buyers, and Craig gave me that confidence. So I think, yeah, I had a huge amount of confidence in those two guys, that they really did understand the market in the local area. Did Martin Gerard represent good value for money? I think the bottom line has to be yes. I've bought and sold houses for a number of years, and it's really important for me that you have that human connection and that contact and the support. I think I understood, as he'd explained, it was a unique property. I really was going to rely on their support heavily to sell it. Fatmir was really helpful in keeping the communication up and down the chain, and really making it move forward at the right pace. Ours was a probate sale, so we couldn't sell immediately. So he kept our buyers interested while we were going through that. And equally, when their buyers were experiencing some challenges and difficulties, I think Craig and Fatmir, they worked hard for their percentage. And for me, that meant I got really good value for money, to be honest. Did I feel Martin Gerard went above and beyond? I think yes, and there are lots of elements to that, actually. One, as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, it was quite a unique property, and they knew that they were going to have to work harder to sell it than they might do if it was, a flat in a block. It would be an easier market. It would be, they'd have a number of people that would be looking after, for that particular property, or a good school catchment area. This was a unique property. They were going to work for it, and they actually, were willing to take up that challenge. So I think to start off, that was really important. I think the other piece about just keeping the chain together, I mean, you could say that's what their job is, but I think they were just so incredibly proactive. Particularly solicitors just further down the chain were kind of dragging their heels a little bit, and they just made sure that both sets of buyers and me as well kind of knew what was going on, and they made it transparent so that the solicitor kind of really needed to keep things moving, and made it very visible. So that was another thing that I thought was really helpful. And then this is slightly unusual in that we were moving towards a date when we would exchange and complete, and I had been clearing Mum's property, but I was left with 2 large grand pianos that needed a home, and where I'd expected that I might be able to take them, nobody at the moment seemed to be looking for slightly elderly grand pianos. And I raised it with Fatmir one day, and he said, leave it with me. The next day, I got a phone call about 10 o'clock in the morning. So I've got a chap coming around in about an hour. He says, he can take them the same day if he wants them, and literally, from putting that quite unusual request out to Fatmir on the Thursday, by Friday, both pianos were on their way to their new home. And for me, that was something quite special, to be honest. I think that was definitely an above and beyond. So, congratulations for that. That was something special, I must admit. So I've been talking about my experience of working with Fatmir and Craig. But what's also interesting is the connection that Fatmir developed with the person who bought our house. He'd been speaking with them and talking with them for well over a year as they looked for property. And, what's clear is that they trusted him too, that, he recommended they come and look at our house. He explained our house absolutely honestly to them. It's a bit quirky, but I think you'd like quirky, and they came and they looked at it. So it's clear that he built a real relationship with them as well. I just like to, I think it's not just my unique experience, but actually, our buyers certainly seem to have that same experience as well, working with Fatmir. Martin Gerard still has got that sort of family connection in running the business. And I think certainly the people, Craig and Fatmir, who I've had most of my connection with at Martin Gerard in North Finchley, I felt that they were really good guys. Craig, as I mentioned, had come out to value the property 12, 13 years ago. And he would bump into my mum, on the high street and have a chat to her, if he saw her. And I think that was really nice. And when she passed away, he shared some reflections of the conversations he'd had with her. And I felt that was a really human, it was a really nice, one, that he did it, and also two, that he felt to share that. And I thought that was really nice. It demonstrated a degree of empathy. I think they are different to a lot of other estate agents that I've dealt with. I personally, I've sold and bought properties, and also I've rented out properties as well. So I've had quite a lot of dealings with estate agents over the years. And I think it really does matter the people that they have, that who work there. That the personal connection is really important. The understanding that both sides are human. It's a very stressful transaction for people because it's about their homes, somewhere to live. And I think it's really important that you have people that can connect, and can deliver on their promises. And I think both Craig and Fatmir, were exceptional people to deal with, actually. So I think Martin Gerard must be very pleased to have those two guys. The reason I've given up time to do this, Fatmir asked me, would you mind doing a video testimony of reflecting on the work that he and Craig did? And I said, absolutely yes, because it's important that people get feedback from their customers. It's fine to market yourself and say this is what we promised to do, but actually when you get a real life customer turning up and saying, these guys are great. Fatmir asked me, and I just didn't hesitate because the service had been so good, such personal guys. I mean, if I was still living up in London, they would be my go-to for any property need. Absolutely. So yeah, I didn't hesitate. One, because I wanted to give a little something back, just to say thank you. But also, I think it's really hard to find an estate agent if you're looking to buy or sell a house. And I just wanted to kind of give that, to share that, so that it gives somebody else the confidence to say, actually, Martin Gerard and Craig and Fatmir are the guys that I want to work with whether I'm buying or selling a property as well. Based on the experience, the fabulous experience I had with Craig and Fatmir, I would absolutely recommend Martin Gerard to friends and family. And as I said, if I was still living up in London, I would absolutely always use them for all my property needs. I got a real sense that they got, not my transaction with them was about selling a house, but they also, and I don't have the direct experience of them working in the rental market, but some of the connections that they need, I needed some help at certain points. It was clear that they've got a good network of people behind them as well. So absolutely, I'd have no hesitation recommending them.